So I think it is not late for us, and I'm happy that we have a president with huge courage to take decisions. And my hope is that over the next 2-3 years, Amadi said something that some of the decisions the president has taken, people will wonder, does this man want second term? But like it is said, a petty, narrow-minded politician who is seeking power for his own sake, think of the next election. A statesman who wants the best for his country will speak about what works for his country, regardless of the consequences. There are many of us who want to have the best of omelette, but don't touch our eggs. But every president that wants to serve his people good omelette knows that he must break somebody's eggs, if however powerful that person is. Because what you have titled Nigeria Yesterday, Today, and a Prosperous Future. I did plead with you that I am not in a position to give a lecture. I have never been a lecturer, so I can't be a professor. And you have listened to lecturers, you have listened to people who are in the academia. There are even professors in the hall. They are better placed to do the talking. All I've done in my life is fighting professors, fighting managers, fighting political power, and fighting capital. So none of this qualified me, therefore, to give a lecture. But I did say that I am encouraged early in life never to feel intimidated by experts, because the dictatorship of experts can be very, very dangerous. Sometimes more dangerous than the dictatorship of military generals, because they have the power to influence the way you think and to make you feel inferior, even on issues where they are wrong, because you don't have the command of those jargons. The debate is closed and it's limited to few of them alone. So I've learned early in life to interrogate. The more expert they think they are, the more I feel obliged to interrogate them. A stammerer should not be afraid of a debate. It might take him more time to pronounce a word, but eventually he will get there. What has excited me is the way in which Professor Amadi, I think he has summarized the issues, and I was very impressed by what I think is my takeaway from his presentation, namely that, these Western ideas which our professors, our intellectuals are competing to imbibe and to assimilate and to popularize and to indoctrinate our younger ones about a nation whose government is just there to regulate, and even at that minimum regulation, and that the private sector should be assigned with the responsibility of running the country, running the economy. And they tell us government has no business in business. Today, I was excited hearing Professor Amadi saying that is not exactly correct. If government has no business in government, why do we go through all the rigor, all the challenges we go through to elect a government? That is why in one of my interventions in the Senate, I said, I am not a believer in the classical school of Adam Smith that says government should not interfere, we should trust the market, and that it is the invisible hand in society that will help to balance this out. And I said, if indeed there is such thing as a visible hand, why do we elect a president? Why do we elect a governor? The market, by its nature, is not accountable except to the buyer and the seller. But we elect governments that are accountable, that we should be held responsible for our collective well-being. And so when I heard him today say what he said, I said, then I'm not exactly crazy. So I am going to start my conversation, not a lecture, just a discussion the way we used to do under the village tree, because my father was he's the greatest teacher, and my mom, assistant teacher. Between the two, everything I have, they are responsible. I think that if we take a critical look at where we're coming from, Nigeria was at its best when, I believe sensibly, we submitted to what was then described as a mixed economy. It's not a completely capitalist economy, nor was it a combined economy. The government sensibly played a critical role to reconcile the greed of private enterprise with the primary purpose of government, which does not always coincide, which is the welfare of the people. That primary purpose of government is often undermined by the power of capital. And unless the state intervenes, you can't have stability. Now let's just look at, for people of my age, and quite a few of you are here, including the former IG, I used to call him Comrade IG of police, even though he arrested me, even by himself, by his agent and previous, and got me detained a couple of times, but he didn't kill me. As you can see, I'm here, and we are friends. You know, for me, Nigeria was at its best when we formulated policy that were informed by the Nigerian condition and by the character of the Nigerian people. Up until that needless debate about whether or not the Nigerian state should surrender and we should delegate the market to regulate our lives. The more debate about structural adjustment program. Before then, we were persuaded by the West that the market, not government, not bureaucracy, because Amadi was talking about respecting the public service. We were persuaded to accept that state is inherently inefficient, the state is hopelessly corrupt, and therefore we will do well to minimize and reduce regulation, smaller government, and assign more responsibility to the private sector. That is what informed the debate on whether or not IMF loan should be taken, or we shouldn't take it with all the conditionalities attached to it. And then we had a president who was extremely smart, a military president, who then got us busy debating, and at the end of the day, Nigeria moved radically away from a mixed economy to one that expressly commits itself to small government and more space for the market. And so we deregulated the banking system, we devalued the currency, we were told Nigeria is underborrowed, and this is why I'm very suspicious of intellectuals. Nigeria is underborrowed, so we should go and borrow. So from a situation in which General Gawan said money was not the problem but how to spend it, we not only now finished spending what we earn, we started borrowing. And to encourage us to borrow more, economists tell us about how much you can borrow in relation to GDP. They always have some statistics as if this were in the holy documents. And so we borrowed to a point that they now came back to say, you have overborrowed. And for us to support you, you must devalue your currency. You must float it. Thus subsidize consumption. And when you devalue your home, goods and services produced at home will be cheaper, and therefore you have greater export opportunities. Because Nigeria-made goods, we find cheaper prices overseas, and foreign goods will be too expensive for the natives to buy, since we are now in our native land. And because they can't buy, we'll go to have a more realistic balance of trade. And that is how around 1978 or so, the Naira was devalued from where it was 1 Naira to 1.5 US dollars. When I went to UK to pay my school fees in the UK, I got my check from, I believe, Barclays Bank, which is now Union Bank. They issued me manager's check on the desk. I didn't have to lobby anybody. And I paid my school fees with that check. It was honored in UK. And everything else was working. With my 1,000 BTA, I got 920 pounds, British pounds sterling. And thereafter, everything collapsed. And as we speak, from a situation in which 1 naira was $1.5, $1.4, we now have 1,450 naira to the dollar. And that explains the crisis of poverty and all the other things that this current president now have to deal with. Because if we do not understand how we got here, we can't fix it. I work in a textile factory. And I'm very proud about that. Because it speaks to the whole issue of unity of our country, but also having leaders that are inward-looking, that can think ahead of his people. The Premier of Northern Nigeria decided that, given the fact that cotton is produced in most parts of Northern Nigeria, he reasoned and believed correctly that it does not make sense to export that cotton without value addition to Manchester in UK for this cotton to be processed into fabric and to be imported back into Nigeria without value addition. And so he set up Kaduna Textile Factory, which employed about 5,000 Nigerians, running 24/7, 3 shifts, employing between 4,000 and 5,000 people. And I believe Awolowo responded by building a textile factory called Ikeja Textiles. So we're in Ikeja in Lagos, in that business. The result, about 30,000 workers, textile workers in Kaduna lost their jobs. Their warehouses have become churches. In Ikeja and Lagos, Apapa, Ikomu, Isolo, over 100,000 people were working there. Even Dangote, before he shifted to the oil sector now, he bought over Ikeja Textiles. And today, the textile industry is gone, courtesy of free market. How can you subscribe to something that you cannot participate in? How can you have a free market where you only buy but you have nothing to sell? And the only thing we have to sell is crude. And that crude is not determined competitively. It is determined by some forces in the West, whether the president of US is sick or whether the publish of data, it shows that economy is slowing down, that affects the price of oil, whether China is growing or China is slowing down, and all of that. And so the result is that today, we are importers of, from the lowest second-hand fabric to the most sophisticated suit anybody can wear. And I'm not looking at our guest of honor. So when Amadi said, no, this idea of government has no business in government, that is a fallacy. I agree completely. Number two, it's so difficult to understand for people like me how people of my generation and even those of us who are younger, who are now in government, we have actually, without policy pronouncement, just by practice, privatized basic education. When I became governor of Edo State in 2007, one of the first meetings I had was with Okada riders. I didn't understand how a motorbike can become a means of mass transit. Intracity transportation. How? When I grew up in Kaduna, you don't want to ride a motorbike. If you must do, you can't even get your wife to agree to back with you because they have to sit, they don't want to hold you. You know what I mean? For religious reasons, for all sorts of reasons. And Nigeria had degenerated to a level that is a motorbike that is now mass transit. But After having conversation with them, I asked them about education. And I was shocked that virtually all of them, about 80% of them, have their children in, quote, private schools, private primary schools, private secondary schools. These are poor people who derive their income from motorbike riding, and you pay them small money and so on and so forth. And I asked them why. They said to me, although they are not sure of the quality of these private schools, some are of high grade, others are low, but at least usually they have roof. The classrooms are roofed, and there are no potholes inside the classroom, and they have what look like table and chairs in the classroom. But government schools, from the classroom, the children can see the sky. When honorable members are flying across to land in Benin, the children are waving from their classroom to the aircraft. And those we consider, we describe as schools for the children of the poor. And so everybody now conclude that, look, you rather take your child to a mushroom private school. So what does that mean? It means that we have privatized education. If education was privatized in my time, I will not be here. I would have been languishing in my father's cassava farm, and in the evening in my mother's groundnut farm. And by now, I probably would have departed because of hardship. So how is it that those who were beneficiaries of Awolowo's basic education in the West, and of Sadana's education even with allowance in the North? I heard so much about Barewa College. It wasn't private. There were high-profile, first-class institutions across the country. A degree holder from University College, Ibadan, is better recognized than a degree holder from one of the American universities. America was considered as inferior in terms of quality of education. And we have Indians coming here struggling to be employed as graduate assistant. That was when Nigerian government was in control. And we were persuaded to liberalize, to deregulate, to allow the market to regulate our life. And here we are today. I was a student in the UK in the 70s, in the late 70s. When, for some of us who will remember, talking about the power of a nation state, Henry Kissinger wanted to visit Nigeria, and Joe Garuba said, after consulting with the then head of state, Murtala Mohammed, and he said, Henry Kissinger was not welcome. American foreign minister was not welcome. And now, compare that to when President Jonathan was in Abuja, an American foreign secretary of state came to Nigeria and he said he would come to Abuja. Abuja is not safe. Our president should meet him in Lagos, and he went. That for me summarized the tragedy. From a country that has such self-pride, you can even speak to arrogance because we were in charge of our affairs. So it's not about potential. We were rich. We have everything. We have first-class brains baked in Nigeria universities. Best brains abroad, in Becky, they come to Nigeria to seek education. I went to Malaysia or somewhere, or Malawi, and we met the president there who told me, and I was in company of President Jonathan, that he is very grateful to Nigeria because he is a product of Nigeria Police College, Ikeja. But he said they are paying back because now Nigeria Police is sending officers to Malawi to be trained. So for him, it's payback time. So what went wrong? The state just deteriorated. Everybody resorted to self-help. Everybody to himself, God for all of us. For me, it is not to cry over this. if we recognize that we were at our best when the Nigeria state make policies that are informed by the Nigeria condition, then let us revert back to that. If we don't, free market, these liberal, neoliberal economic policies that Amadi was speaking about, can never deliver prosperity to the majority of our people. It is based on the principle, whether stated or implied, survival of the fittest. If you are poor, it is your fault. If you survive, you are intelligent. And we have smart guys who manipulate the banking system, etc., they become billionaires overnight. So I think it is not late for us, and I'm happy that we have a president with huge courage to take decisions. And my hope is that over the next 2-3 years, Amadi said something that some of the decisions the president has taken, people will wonder, does this man want second term? But like it is said, a petty, narrow-minded politician who is seeking power for his own sake, think of the next election. A statesman who wants the best for his country, we speak about what works for his country, regardless of the consequences. There are many of us who want to have the best of omelette, but don't touch our eggs. But every president that wants to serve his people good omelette knows that he must break somebody's eggs, however powerful that person is. So today, that national item that we are referring to, a country in which no one shall be oppressed. I know that is, I have been fighting oppression, because that is what the national item tells us. A country where no one is oppressed. Today, oppression is the name of the game. Somebody will tell you, I will teach you a lesson. And with a connection with the DPO, it can teach you much more lessons than you ever imagine. So where is the rule of law? There are so many. I'm not in the interior, and I have a way to interact with people who are managing our, quote, correctional homes. We change it from prison to correctional home to emphasize that prison is not meant to kill. But I discovered through my interrogation of those who manage the place that we even care better for dogs than Nigerian prisoners. And the bad news, 50% out of the 80,000 prisoners, 50% are awaiting trial. They have not been convicted. Yet under our laws, they are presumed innocent until found guilty. And yet these people will be fed, although the president has increased it now, 250 naira a meal, including water, and 750 naira a day. Anyway, let's move on. My thesis is that for us to revert, for us to secure the future, we must interrogate the immediate past. And one of the things we can't escape from is that the liberal economic policies have failed Nigeria. For example, last week, I found out that an Indian guy is building an integrated textile factory in Benin Republic. You will wonder why I keep talking about textile factory, not only because I work there, but it's a labor-intensive industry, where few bank clerks will generate the billions that the banks announce. For a textile factory to make billions of naira in profit, it must employ thousands of people working 24/7, running 4 shifts. Now, taking advantage of the African Free Trade Agreement, this India has successively located a huge textile factory in Benin Republic. The market is Nigeria. I want to be able to see the president saying, yes, Africa growth, we have these agreements, but I am elected to uphold the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, not of Africa Charter. We would relate with other countries. The days must be over where we talk of Africa as the centerpiece of our foreign policy, a way to one in which Nigeria and the welfare and the well-being of Nigeria is the central focus of Nigeria foreign policy. If it is not good for Nigeria, we will do it. We will do it. After all, our students, some of you here, we all contributed money for the liberation of South Africa. We naturalized British petroleum. That was the peak of our power. To teach the British a lesson. Can we teach them a lesson? Not Obasanjo. Oh, okay, Obasanjo, military is forthcoming. And we had the power to say, the British people, no, if you support apartheid, we take over your company. And we did. Today, when I hear that the current president of South Africa, in one of his campaigns before this last one, was saying that Nigerians were taking the job of South Africa. And that is how those attacks on Nigeria's small businesses, they were instigated by the state. We helped them to get their freedom, but that does not mean they will allow us to come and dominate their economy. But they are dominating our economy. If you know how much MTN is cutting away every year. So for me, I am advocating that after this 1 year, the president should sit down, government, all of us in the Senate, in the National Assembly, and identify those things, those industries that we need to reinvent, to return back to Nigeria, using our population as a tool to get them back here. 200 million people. If 50%, 100, is wearing Nigerian-made clothes, we will have more than 10 million people working in Nigeria. Government will not be the source of job creation. When we talk about overhead, the governance, is because we have so many institutions, so many desks, try to create opportunities for everybody to work for government. And government is not the best employer in terms of salary. The job may be guaranteed, because whether you work or not, you can be selling t-shirt part-time, but you are not going to be wealthy. You just learn how to steal, and that is it. Because I didn't write anything down specifically, but let me just take you through when people talk about the public sector, why this president has a lot to do. And I'm happy he always assures us nobody should pity him, because he didn't take this job in error. He actually struggled for it. He even had to say a milocom. That's why there is power of the tongue. When somebody said we shouldn't run our country, if we run our country with our mouth, so be it. If we see that we are the hope of the world, there is power in our tongue. That will come to pass. I would like us going forward to say to Machelin, you left Nigeria, but you are still selling tires to Nigeria. 90% of your market is Nigeria. You relocated to another African country. You won't be able to sell in Nigeria unless you relocate. Government will give you take guarantees. And if you can imagine that all the tires in all, the Chinese also go to the World Bank. They also go to the IMF meeting. They listen. When they finish, they say thank you. They go back to Beijing and do what they call capitalism with Chinese Karasari 6. The interest rate is not market driven. The rate you change your money in hotel is the same rate you change it in the bank. I know it because I have been there. That is not market forces. That is state regulation. And when the state functionary abuse power, they execute. They kill. And so, without following Western models, China has become, over a period of 15 to 20 years, they had double-digit growth consistently, not based on market liberal models. When Washington insists that the Chinese currency is overvalued, the Chinese reply, it is not the foreigner who will tell us the value of our currency. In Nigeria, our people will go to the World Bank and IMF, they will tell us what they think we are. And we celebrate that fifth rate, what do they call them now? They have these funny, not funny names, well-known names in West, that they have given us B+, B-, B+++. What the hell does it matter? We are to rate who we are, not foreigners. And until we return back to this homegrown policy and damn the consequences with the way, because they are going to fight us. I do not think that romancing with them is going to deliver us. No, it will not. And they will turn around to accuse us of corruption. And yet every kobo stealing and kept abroad is in their banks. But they are not corrupt. Now, let me conclude. What is going on evil now? That is why when you say we should pray for the president, you were right. I am not a fanatic when it comes to, because I don't believe that just being godly is enough to bail us out. I said something so weird that those who say, praise the Lord, that your business will prosper. It's not correct. The Lord is already a generous Lord. He gives us the brain to think, the hands to walk, and the capacity to move. What we need is to deploy all of this. However, why the president needs prayers? The kind of difficult decisions he has to take will require that we all pray for him, because even both the Bible and the Holy Quran recognize principalities. So we will use our prayers to cast away those principalities so that the president will have the courage, the protection to do what he has to do. For example, just yesterday, on the floor of the Senate, we had to debate and pass a resolution. Many of you would have been participant or heard about the debate about PIB, Petroleum Industry Bill, now Petroleum Industry Act, and that has been passed. This NNPC has been broken to different compartments, private companies, even though there are no private shareholders, and the management do not have the culture of professional managers, as you find elsewhere. And so, with all the fanfare in celebrating Dangote Refinery, for example, that for once we now have a Nigerian who has initiated and built one of the world's biggest refinery. Nigeria crude oil is being exported. They deny to allocate it to Dangote, and they are exporting it to Europe. And then Dangote is importing crude from America into Nigeria. Those guys deserve to be hanged. If we don't hang them, they will hang all of us. Yeah, they will hang all of us. And what it takes to hang them will require a president with extraordinary courage. Now, if you know anything about science, you will know I'm not so privileged. The diesel they are importing diesel. Even at a time when the CBN is saying there is too much pressure on our imports. We celebrated, President Buhari celebrated, President Tinubu celebrated one of his achievements, because it was his dream to create a free trade zone in that part of Lagos, which Dangote now took advantage of to locate his factory. What he saw as a governor between 1999 and 2007 is what gave birth. It is the product of his womb that Dangote refinery now located in Lagos and has the capacity to satisfy the Nigerian market. And yet, some Nigerians who join us in lamenting, they are importing low-quality diesel that has been prohibited in Europe, that will pollute our environment, destroy our engines, and use our scarce foreign exchange to pay for it, whereas Dangote Refinery in Lagos is in a position and is producing diesel. And he even announced reduction of the price. But these Nigerians who put themselves first before the country are not interested. They are living here in Abuja. They are unknown to ballot. They are not scrutinized by the Nigerian electorate. Their name doesn't appear in any newspaper. You will abuse the president. Yet, the president has no knowledge about what is going on, because you'll be given your responsibility. And when you ask them, say, look at the PIB Act. That's why yesterday we said, even that act, we will revisit it. Review it. You can't have a sovereign company under a sovereign nation. that is not accountable to the people. No, you cannot be bigger than the president. If we can interrogate our president, we can harass him on television. Who the hell is the other person in Nigeria? Who is an appointee? Who is above the law? So they are importing these things so that Dangote refinery will eventually not prosper. And if you look at the numbers, what NNPC has spent between when President Obasanjo sold out the refineries, for those of you who have some memory, NNPC persuaded Yar'Adua, who took over from Obasanjo, that they can run the refinery. They need $800 million. Between that time and now, they spend over $10 billion. Port Harcourt refinery is not working. Every minister has come to set a new date. It's only in Nigeria you have several birthdays for a person. And they just say it, and then their tenure lapse, the new minister come and say, I have done a review. They carry out new tours, they fix a new date. Now we have a refinery built by Nigeria. They want to destroy it. Can you believe that we are exporting, that the Nigeria produce oil? The multinationals refuse to sell to Dangote. Are they the owner? No. And we have a government. And the government is helpless under the so-called PIB. He has to appeal and urge them. You must sell. Excuse me, we have a lot to do. We need a balance of some madness and some ruthlessness to get Nigeria back on the road. And that is what we have to do. Otherwise, lamentation, I have always said, I wasn't born to lament my life. I was born to confront challenges and to overcome them. If I can speak here today, sir, it is because my late father told me, Adams, hard work does not kill. What kills is laziness. Courage is a requirement for a man to navigate through very dangerous forests. And every good thing is in that forest. As you can see, those of you drinking Chinese tea, they are all from the forest. But when you process them, they do some nice things in your system. So let me conclude by saying that for me, we have hope. And this president rightly said there's a renewed hope. The world is renewed if you have given up. And Amadi says so. When you give up on yourself, who is going to bail you out? Now, somebody talk about productivity. I think Amadi. How can we be productive without power? I also believe that going forward, we have to revisit the privatization of the power sector. People who have neither the knowledge, the know-how, nor the competence took over power distribution under the previous government. And the result today is that this is the only market economy where the person who sells estimates what he thinks you have consumed, and on that basis give you a bill. I thought the attraction of private sector is that you either sell and survive or you don't and you perish. Here, no power. While you are in the dark, they give you a estimated bill. That we have to not lament away. As parliament, those are things we must make law to criminalize. If you don't give me meter, you cannot collect. And I'm sure you know, in many of our communities, when I was campaigning, I got to a community where the BDC said they were owing about 19.8 million naira. The entire income of the community is not up to that. And so they were disconnected for about 2 years. Now election is coming, and they tell me they are in the dark. Okay, that is part of the good thing about democracy. Now, these people are in the dark, but they can vote on election day. So I have to appropriate money to pay the bill for them so that they can vote for me. But that is not the logic of privatization, that you will price electricity out of the reach of the ordinary Nigerian, who only need one bulb just to see. He has no air condition, he has no refrigerator. Even worse, as governor of Edo State, I spent taxpayers' money in hundreds of millions to buy transformers. Not to even big men, many of you have had to pay for a transformer. That is the part of the cost of distribution. Now, this is made by individual pays the cost, and then these private BDC, discos, take up the ownership, and they give you bill. If you have a house anywhere in Abuja here, you buy your own transformer, and then once you buy it, it becomes the property of the distribution. Where else in the world do you pay for basic costs and yet you pay your bill without deducting it from your investment? So there are a lot of things that have to be done. All of this will require courage. The good news, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has excessive dosage of courage. And I believe he will invest half of that, and Nigeria will be on the march again. And like you said, I joined our convener in saying that we haven't come here to lament. We've come here to say, if Nigeria worked before, we just need to find out what did we do wrong that brought us on our knees. But remember, for me, basic common sense, if the elephant was strong enough to dominate the forest, and all the trees were shaking when the elephant is coming, lesser animals were afraid. And somehow he caught some ailment or something, and it went on his knees. When you nurture it back to health, it will still dominate his forest. And all other animals will take a bow. Nigeria will make it, and I have confidence. Not my tears, but my courage. Together, we'll bring Nigeria back to a country that no one is oppressed, that people are ready to. Thank you very much.